Hey guys, it's February 4th, 2018, and this is your episode 132 of At Percussion. I'm your host, Casey Cangelosi, and with me, as usual, are Megan Arns.
Hello.
And Laurel Black.
Hi.
And Charles, how was your day of percussion yesterday?
It was good, it was stressful, and now it's over.
Yay, good job.
Who were your guest artists?
So I had my friend Kate Burns, who I play duos with somewhat regularly. She came in. We played a movement of Adam Hart's Club together, which is a super cool guitar duo. And I had Matt Jacklin from Olivet Nazarene University, and he played the second and third movements of Aurora Borealis by John Thorower, which is pretty cool, and I got to play on.
Cool,
Sweet.
Cool people. So, you guys, our guest today is praised by the New York Times for his, quote, understated but unmistakable virtuosity. He's one of the leading percussion soloists of our day and has appeared at the Lincoln Center, Carnegie Hall, and the Kennedy Center. As an advocate for contemporary music, he has premiered works by Andy Akiho, Mason Bates, and Paul Lansky. He serves as the Director of Percussion Studies at the University of Miami Frost School of Music, which means he was Ben Charles' teacher.
He was my teacher!
Yeah, so we got a lot of questions
He
for
survived
Svets.
me.
So we have a lot of questions for Svet.
I don't know, where did you get all that information, Casey? Okay. I don't know where that bio came from.
Yeah, so Svet, why did you let Ben graduate?
That's a very good question. I've been thinking about it for a while. Honestly, seriously speaking, I think I let Ben graduate because he earned it.
Oh.
Okay, let me ask this another way. What's your biggest regret about letting Ben graduate?
I'm yet to find out about that, but I'm open to finding out about that. You know, it's just giving him a chance to really come up with some really good ones. But, you know, Ben was always just very enthusiastic. I remember especially one day he came to me and said, you know, I really want to switch grips. I said, Ben, but your grip is fantastic. Well, he said, no, I really, really need to learn how to play cross grip. I said, but, you know, it's not about the kind of grip you use, but just how well you use it. And you use very well the grip you play now. You played Stevens. He said, no, you don't understand. I need to do this. You know? How does someone like that not graduate? Someone so optimistic, someone who just wants to do this in the middle of their studies and say, I also want to master this new grip, and that's it. Ben was always basically the person that just went up for the challenge, and he was the one that challenged himself first, actually, with all of this. So it's hard to have regrets, about someone like this. You know, it's the greatest thing is to just, for all of us, to challenge ourselves. And, you know, not be afraid, whether it's small or big challenge, just basically face it and then go for it. And so there you have it.
Nice.
Wow, cool. I wasn't expecting a serious answer. That's good. That's great.
Neither was Ben.
well, you know, this day's recorded, so I have to make sure that, you know, I really, literally tried to keep the Bulgarian humor as tamed as possible.
Not necessary.
Yeah, this is a clean professional operation for sure.
Well, no, I'm super excited to be able to speak together, guys, and I wanted to thank you also for having me and for being able to share this time together.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're very, very welcome. Well, hey, tell us real quick, you know, maybe what you're up to. I assume you're calling us from Miami right now. What's on the table for you?
On the table is lots of music and a lot of projects. Eventually, we all, I think, reach these points where we realize that for every new yes we say, we have to have a no somewhere. You know, there's so much that one does that eventually we have to just not only maintain the quality of what we do, but also really continue to balance how much of it can we do in order to keep the quality, you know. And so I'm in a place where just literally very delicate balancing of multiple very exciting projects. One is a very big concerto commission. I cannot tell you who is it from, but it's something that's moved along in a very sort of exciting stages. And it is basically a concerto that I so look forward to being able not only to play, but to have become part of our repertoire. You know, we're always in a hunt for new music, and I know Casey also you're right, of course, and, you know, looking for just music that gives us in our art form justice. Oh, it's just so wonderful. So this is one major project of mine. It's been in the works for a long time. Speaking of concerti, I just finished recording a concerto that was written for me by Mason Bates. And that concerto, guys, I know actually starting to be played already. People playing it. It's actually very rare because this is for actually wind ensemble and solo percussion. And that is so cool because that is far rare to find, as a concerto compared to, say, symphony orchestra percussionist soloists, So the piece is absolutely killer. I mean, I think Mason Bates is a musical genius of all sorts. And he wrote this 16-minute piece called Sidemen, which has a drum set part in it. It has mallet playing in it. It's beautiful, but it's very, very sort of versatile piece, and it's just extremely beautiful piece. So that just got recorded. It's about to be finished, I think, in the next few weeks. It's supposed to be actually done, mixed and mastered. So I'm looking forward to finishing up because I want to release a Bates CD. And what else? I have a bunch of travels coming up. I'm excited. I work with one of the projects I do right now is I work with a group here in Miami, which is called New Deco Ensemble, and we just played with Time for Three. Next project we have is we're playing with Jacob Collier, who's coming here.
Which I'm super jealous of.
You should be. You should be. No, it's exciting. And then Ben Foltz is coming after that, so we're working with him. So we're doing the Arts Center, man, which is basically almost 2,000-seat hall, fantastic hall. And we're playing in the New World Center also, which is the New World Symphony's home, which is a brand new building by Frank Garrett, gorgeous. So then I go to Europe for a while. I am working with Katarzyna Michko, who is a dear friend of mine. We're judging a competition. We're going to play together for a bit. Visiting actually a musical friend whose name is Fabian Ziegler. He's in Switzerland, and he's invited us to go and play on his concert series as well. So I'm just really looking forward to these projects. Then in the summer, I'm traveling more, playing a few concerts in Baltimore, and it's all chamber music, basically. Some Crump, some Bartok, some conducted chamber music at a festival that Marinelli started, which is basically for contemporary chamber music that's conducted mostly. And it just goes and goes. You know how it is. But basically, I'm in a constant of looking to continually refine what I do and keep the balance of how much can I do and do it well. It's one of those things. And final, something really special, which I'm kind of really proud and excited to share with you guys, because actually I think this is the first time people are hearing about it officially, is here in this beautiful platform you have. I started a project where I want to basically record music, but record it not only with microphones, but also with cameras. And the final product basically is not only a totally state-of-the-art recording as quality-wise, but also it's a video representation of a real recording session. And so basically someone who would experience this would be able to hear the real audio of the session in a sense that's obviously mixed and mastered, but also would really be able to see the actual moment music has been born and when someone actually records it on tape. And the way it's done is very cinematographic, but it is not, what you might expect when you go to a concert hall. It's not formal. It's cinematographic, but it's informal. It's real. And we're about to begin releasing sort of these projects that include some really wonderful pieces, one of which I know Ben is very familiar with. It's Kyoto by John Satas. That's going to come out really soon. And John is very supportive of, very excited of it. We are in the very final stages of completing the legalities of it all, because these are videos, not audio. And then Water by Alejandro Vinao is going to come out, which is basically his piece for 5 percussionists and piano. And in some of this I play, some of this I produced. A lot of the people who play, basically people who either currently study with me or studied with me. And I am just so extremely proud of all of them, because, I mean, the level of playing that these guys demonstrate in these recording sessions is just stunning. I mean, it's hard music, and they just really gave their heart. So it sounds professional. It's done professionally. I cannot wait to share with everybody, because I feel like, you guys tell me what you think. I mean, if you're a percussionist, you kind of hear music and you go, oh, I know what that sounds like and I know what it looks like. But for someone who doesn't really know percussion, don't you think that them kind of hearing this sounding well, but also seeing it might let them connect with it more?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think percussion, they do need to see, if you can learn a lot by listening to a violin recording, exactly what you're listening to, but percussion, I mean, it will just get so lost if you label it, you label it metal sounds or even something more specific like cymbals. I mean, there's so many varieties, as we all obviously know. That's just a headache for composers who aren't familiar with it. And it's good for young percussionists too, because they go like, holy shit, that's a lot of cymbals. And look at all, I don't know. Yeah, no, of course, you're absolutely right. There's so much more information in the visual aid for us.
Yeah, and also when you're actually able to experience someone performing something, I think that this is in a way almost getting someone even closer to the player than they could get to if they're in a concert hall. It's very unusual that way. So for me, the whole idea always was that I feel a lot of times there's always, even if something is easy to play or hard to play, whether intellectually or technically, doesn't matter. There is some sort of struggle when we create music. It's basically our greatest attempt as a human being, for example, human beings, to just create something out of ourselves. Literally putting ourselves and all of our sensors and sort of gifts and imperfections and all of it put together to the ultimate test, and just going, I'm going to try my hardest, best as possible to just do this. It's like you give yourself away to the art and you just try your best. And I feel like there's something really important to capture in that. We live in such an amazing sort of visual era, and I feel that sometimes, we don't benefit from the technology we have sometimes, as much as we could. So I said, let me give this a shot, and we saw what happened, and I said, whoa, holy crap, this is pretty serious. And so I basically am committed partially to continuing to do these projects. Katarzyna Michka and I recorded Passacaglia like this. And I have to say, I cannot wait, because there's just so many just beautiful experiences that get captured like this, that, sometimes you try to tell a story, but you go like, you just have to be there. I can't recreate it. Even if I was, the greatest poet that ever lived, it's just impossible to relive something. You have to be there. So anyway, that is basically another part of, my mission in a sense. Like, I think it's one of those things you have to just decide what things you want to do, because I think when I turned 36 for the first time, I realized that I am definitely not going to be able to do everything in my life that I really want to do. There's just no time, even if you live until 100, you can't play until then, which basically makes you think, well, how much time do I think I can play at my best, and how much can I do, and what should it be, and what should I not do,
That's why Ben just plays as fast as possible on Facebook, as often as possible.
Right. That's right. I told Ben to think about it, since he clearly has.
Does this go in the regrets category, or?
Ben, do you have something there?
Yeah, well, hearing Svet talk about how busy he is all the time, this story came up about a week ago when I was teaching. And it's probably the most profound moment of my education happened with Svet. And so just a brief sort of background information about this. At Miami, the percussion ensemble is basically entirely unconducted chamber works, and the students are expected to rehearse 2 or 3 times weekly before Svet meets with them for a coaching. And these rehearsals are scheduled regularly. It's not like you have to get together every week with your planner and figure out when you're rehearsing. But we were playing Xenakis Poe, and we had one week where it was like there was a wind ensemble concert, we had gigs. It was just like one of those crazy weeks that everything interfered with our rehearsal time. So like we meet with Svet Monday one week, and then we go a week and we don't rehearse, and we come back the next Monday, and things aren't going well in rehearsal. And Svet is very happy and joyful right now, but he also has a very fierce side to him. And as you can imagine, things in the rehearsal started to get a little tense. And Svet asked, what did you guys do in your rehearsals? And we said, well, Svet, we had this crazy week, and there was a wind ensemble concert. We had an extra rehearsal for it. We had to move gear, and Maria and I had gigs, and it was just one thing after another. We're not making excuses. This is legitimately what happened, why we didn't rehearse. And Svet goes, oh, really? You didn't have time to rehearse? And we're all like, yeah, we're really sorry. It's just everything, interfered, and this rehearsal room is so busy, we can't just get in here whenever we want. And Svet goes, oh, really? What were you doing at 6 a.m. this morning? And there was just dead silence. And everyone was just like, well, shit, I guess we could have rehearsed. And the next words out of Svet's mouth were like, they've just stuck with me. He said, I need you to be a little bit uncomfortable. I need you to make yourself a little bit less than comfortable every now and then if you're trying to achieve something great. And I think that's just such a perfect way of putting it. And like, knowing Svet, I've seen Svet himself be very, very uncomfortable at times. Like when he learned the A percussion concerto in a week, I won't say the composer's name, and nailed it on a Sunday concert. It's like, God, like, yeah, if you don't sleep, you can do that. And we always made fun of Svet because he would also lecture us on how we needed to take care of ourselves and get enough sleep and eat well.
But then I would also say that you should not look at me doing it or sort of not doing it, because I said I'm not a good example of this. Don't do as I do. Do the opposite. You'll be great.
But yeah, it's hard to talk to your students about that, I think, because, sometimes you're like, oh, gosh, I am not always, it's hard to do that.
Yeah.
But you want them to be healthy, but also, like, sometimes you got to really, really push. And
yeah, but, I think that it's okay. I feel that one of the interesting things about first of all, I really think that students are brilliant. And, I think a very healthy approach that I think we all take is to never underestimate the intelligence and the uniqueness of every student. And I think students very well realize something that I think, say, the previous century of pedagogy may have not been something at all that it was ever discussed. Nobody who teaches students, no professor is perfect. And the fact that is admitted, I think, really kind of opens up this sort of space for, exhale, everything is fine, and that is something that I tell them always. I definitely am not perfect, and I want them to learn from the things that I want to share with them, and without reservation. So, but also I want them to learn from the things that I know I wish I did better, and sometimes maybe my life and my schedule make it impossible, but that itself is something they can learn from, and I share, and obviously I don't take myself seriously. Sometimes you just have to crack a joke on it too, and that's when I said, I know I'm telling you to rest and I don't, but don't do as I do. That's exactly right. You have to learn from some of the things that I shouldn't do myself, but it's what it is. So yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry, please finish.
No, and in that sense, I feel that, kids are brilliant. And I think that when man is saying, you talk to them, but they also they observe you and you set the example. And I think that lessons always can be learned both as a do's and don'ts. And that's just really, actually, in fact, you learn so much more if you think of what are the don'ts I learned,
Mm-hmm. And I would just add, I think it's not hypocritical to tell your students, hey, do this thing that I'm not good at doing. Like, take care of yourself, even though I don't take care of myself. I mean, it's perfectly good advice to say, this is important to me that you do this because I've suffered from not doing it well. And I still suffer from it. So, I mean, that's like a perfectly honest thing to do. And although it seems like, oh, wait, but you don't do that. It's like, yeah, exactly. That's why I know why you should do that. It's exactly why I think you should, I don't know, you need to practice your sight reading more because I didn't. And now I'm a crappy sight reader and I don't want you to suffer like I have. I mean, it just makes perfect sense.
It's like I won first.
Or like I figured it out. Or like I figured it out the hard way, and this is what I figured out. So use that advice, and me falling on my face for you to not have to do that.
Exactly, right on. And the thing is, I feel that that's also where, if one builds relationships with their students where there's a lot of respect, even if sometimes they understand that, you will not always see eye to eye with them. They will not always see eye to eye with you. There just has to be enough respect where you feel like at the end of the day, when these lessons occur of do's and don'ts, students will just trust you on this. Because a lot of times, I mean, I'm sure for all of you guys, we're all colleagues and friends, I feel like the lessons are not necessarily always coming. Musical lessons don't always come from music, and we don't always have to only talk about music to teach a fantastic musician. We really have to kind of bring life into the equation as well, and that itself is amazing. But it's a whole different dimension of the conversation. It adds a whole different dimension, and so I think that in that sense, I'm grateful to have good relationships with the students where there's a lot of respect and there's trust, to where they know if Svet says something good, he means it, and if Svet's not happy, he definitely means it. And if we're talking, about learning from my mistakes, I'm definitely happy that they know and they see sometimes that I'm not perfect, and that's perfectly cool, because the truth is, I feel that it's impossible to get it all right. It's just no way, You look at some things, you go, wow, what was I thinking about that, and you look at somebody else who's doing a fantastic job, you go, hello, how do you do this? And I think that's just perfectly great, Ben, I'm glad you remembered this. I honestly feel that, I remember hearing this from, it actually came from a strange place that sort of verbalized it for me. I think it came from non-classical music, either Lady Gaga or Pink. I think he may have been Pink. Said, I really make the best part of my art. I create the best part of my art when I'm miserable, when I'm not in a place that's just comfortable and I'm just fine and everything is okay. Because I don't really ask myself a lot of questions at that point that really bring up what then helps me create sort of art, new art, and then real art, I'm not quoting, but that's what I think was intended in there, yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, wow. Thanks so much. Great thoughts. Megan, for a little change of subject here, Megan's always pushing everyone's buttons and talking about political things and major news events, but you got a little current event for us, Megan.
I do. That is, I try to usually present on a current topic. And this week I was reading the New York Times and the music section, and one of the 8 events of the week was a performance. Well, actually, the title today of that section was Border Percussion. And I was like, what's that about? And it led me to an article in the New Yorker by none other than the wonderful Alex Ross about a performance of John Luther Adams' Inuksuit, which I've talked about on the podcast before. I believe it was like episode 2 back at the very beginning. There have been so many performances of this in the past 10 years, and in beautiful places, in the mountains, in the desert, inside the Park Avenue Armory, in parks, college campuses, just so many amazing places that this piece has been performed. I have never heard of it being performed as a political statement before, and of course, one of our former guests on the podcast here, Stephen Schick. This idea was his brainchild, and it's a part of the San Diego Symphony's a series that they have. And he had this idea to perform Inuksuit on the border of the United States and Mexico at the site of the, hopefully not large wall, but where there is a wall at the moment. So the article title is Making the Wall Disappear, a Stunning Live Performance at the U.S.-Mexican Border by Alex Ross. And again, you can find it in the New Yorker. Alex Ross's writing style is amazing. I'm a huge fan. If you haven't read any of his stuff yet, please go check it out, especially this article. So I've got a lot of quotes here, so we can hear some of his words. But the subtitle of the article, or actually it's a picture caption, was The San Diego Symphony's Performance of John Luther Adams' Percussion Work Inuksuit at the U.S.-Mexican Border on Saturday transcended the geography of political separation. And to set the scene for you, I'm just going to read the first paragraph. So this took place on Saturday, which is just a little over a week ago. Quote, the percussionist and conductor Stephen Schick looked through the wire mesh fence that separates San Diego, California from Tijuana, Mexico, and said, Con la música nunca se puede divertirnos. Divertirnos, yes. I hope I said that with an okay accent. And it translates to, with music, we cannot be divided. He was addressing a group of Mexican percussion players who were about to participate in a singular cross-border performance of JLA's hour-long percussion work Inuksuit. I was standing on the Mexican side, where the wall is adorned with brightly colored graffiti and studded with messages, some sentimental and some political. On the reverse, a gray institutional look prevails. We were on the far western edge of the U.S.-Mexican border. The land slopes down to the Pacific Ocean, and the wall descends with it, disappearing into the waves. So it really kind of sets the theme, and I definitely did not know that about the wall, that it was colored and there's a lot of graffiti and messages and political statements on one side and then completely blank on the other one. So that was really interesting. for me to hear that. And it really does kind of set the scene. So I won't talk about Inuksuit because you could go back and listen to the other episode where we actually talk about that. But I will remind you that it's for 9 to 99 percussionists. So for this performance, there were 35 players on the northern side, the U.S. side, and 29 on the south. There were percussionists on the Mexican side. There were percussionist from the Philharmonic. So Gabriela Jimenez is the timpanist of the Mexico City Philharmonic. There are also leading Mexican percussionists such as Ruben Hernandez, Jorge Peña, and Ivan Manzanilla. And their students, and one of those was Elian Sanchez from Tijuana, who's 13 years old. And on the American side, there were lots of American percussionists, or 29, but most significantly, leaders of this section were San Diego Symphony players, since it was part of the series. And those were Greg Cohen, Andrew Watkins, Aaron Douglas Dowry, and Ryan DeLisi. On the American side, there were about 250 people in the audience, and they had hiked about a mile to reach this site, since you can't quite drive to the border in this location. So they did the performance. It's about an hour-long work, and there's a really cool video in the article that you can check out where Alex is kind of walking around, and at one point he kind of peers through the mesh to see the other side. One of my favorite things about Inuksuit is the way it ends, because it's supposed to kind of take you back to the environment that you're in. So we kind of come to the performance without being a part of the environment. We become a part of the environment, and then we leave it again. And in this performance, I'll just read you again Alex's words about the ending, because I love this. Quote, "In the final minutes, Inuksuit grows quiet again. Thundering drums give way to shimmering triangles and cymbals. Samuel Pianado, one of the younger Mexican performers, executed elegant bird motifs on the glockenspiel. There was a faint rumble in the distance. I couldn't quite tell whether it was an American bass drum, a piece of machinery from somewhere, or the ocean. The crowd grew quiet too. A sense of peacefulness descended, striking in a place charged by so much tension. For a few long moments, the walls seemed to disappear. After that, wild applause ensued, kind of went back and forth in waves. And through the fence, the Mexican percussionists greeted their American counterparts, and Steve Schick shouted, quote, 'I will never forget this day as long as I live. Thank you for coming from Guanajuato, Ensenada, Ciudad de Mexico, and of course, Tijuana.'" Mm-hmm. So that was the end of the article. And then they said that they kind of had a recap of it the next day at a San Diego Symphony performance, talking about the event, explaining what happened, and some thoughts from the performance. So I thought that was really cool. Gave me a lot of ideas. And of course, this is like Steve Schick, he's the man. And I think he's able to really use music and his words, just his presence and the language that he uses is always so impactful. So, gosh, I wish I would have been there. It sounds like an amazing experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just saw Svet, Steve Schick, like we just heard Svet. It's play really well and then articulate something powerful about why you play well, or how you play well, like something beyond, like, this isn't just about entertainment, this is about something so much more. And if I could just share real quick the things I really found interesting in the article. Sure. One from Steve Schick was, let's see, he says, one could be forgiven for having all kinds of political thoughts, since this is, across the U.S.-Mexican border, but I'm mindful of the fact that Border Patrol went out of their way to make this happen. Yes. After the rain, they opened their own roads to us so our musicians could get their instruments to the fence. And that really pairs with the way the article closes. This is at least the text article. I actually haven't read or seen the video yet. But one Border Patrol agent says, "Events here at the border are always about our differences as two nations. And this one was about our similarities, doing things together. As it is over, I miss it. I don't want it to end." I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, I like that quote.
This all reminded me. Go ahead, Svet. Sorry.
No, please, Ben.
Okay. This all reminded me of a song by the band The Who called "Won't Get Fooled Again." Are you guys familiar with this song at all?
I'm really familiar with the Who pinball game.
So
yeah.
This song, it's one of those like just very long songs. It runs somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 minutes. I think it's like 9 minutes. And basically what was happening when this song was written in the early 70s was there was all sort of political unrest in Britain, and there were two political parties at odds with each other, both promising that they could fix everything. And the band, The Who, thought that basically if you threw out the old party and replaced it with a new party, it would be more of the same and people would still be divided. And so they started studying the works of two Eastern religious figures. I'll probably butcher the names, Meher Baba and Inayat Khan. And basically this Eastern philosophy they studied said that there was a chord called the universal chord that if struck, this chord could bring all of humanity together. And so the song, what they did is they hooked up sensors to people and they recorded their brain waves and they plugged that into some sort of processor and they ran an organ through that processor and it creates this pulsating sound. And so there's this little like electronic introduction. The song goes on for a while and then everything drops out except for that electronic pulsation, and it goes on for a little while. Then there's a drum fill, and then there's this earth-shattering, just blood-curdling scream when the band re-enters, and that's supposed to represent the universal chord and bring all of humanity together. So I thought that was another kind of parallel to what's going on politically today and the idea of music bringing people together.
Cool.
Well, when you think about music bringing people together, I think I had a conversation recently with a friend of mine. We're talking about this, and it all came to us. He said, think about any event that is dramatic, any global event that's dramatic. What is one of the first gatherings at that point that follows the event, or it's related to the event? It always has to do with music. There's always music at a gathering that is related to an event that's dramatic in one way or another. And in that sense, I feel that music that is why music is universal. Music and other art are universal. And it's so interesting, it made me think about when you guys were especially talking about the article, when you talked about the multiple aspects of it. What was interesting to me is how important it is for us as musicians to not stop at wanting to learn how to become a really great musician, but also how to basically then figure out and basically use what we do to make big difference. Actually, I think half the battle is really for one to learn how to be a really good musician, and to, obviously that's something you do in your life, but figuring out how do you do this, and then what are you going to do with this to actually make a difference in the world? How do you contribute to the lives of everybody with an art form that's universal? Because I feel that not everything that people learn about every particular profession, etc., is actually universal.
Totally agree. Can we just talk about this for a second?
Yeah. Sorry, we're chatting.
We have a little, as everyone knows, we have a little text feed that goes along with the podcast that we use to communicate while we're recording. And I made a joke in here, and I said, Svet is organizing a performance of Vinao Estudios de Frontera across the Mexican border. And Megan and Laurel both thought that was real.
And Casey.
Well,
I did not. No, to be fair, I did not know it was if it was real or not. I made no judgment.
Okay.
Oh, I definitely want to play Studios de Frontera at the Mexican border. I think that would be awesome. However, I think Ben now has to play with me. And since Laura believed it, I think you guys all just have to. I think we just need. We just could go play Studios de Frontera. I think that's it.
I'm totally in. I'll take the vibe part.
Okay. Anybody else on the claims? I'll play.
I mean, I played bass drum before, and I think I rocked the Vibra slab better than anyone else could. So.
Well, that's good enough reason right there. You're right. It's so interesting because I really am so grateful that we have in our community Steve Schick and people like him. People who are able to find ways to actually do this in a peaceful way, but really do it for the right reasons and have an impact. Just go and make a difference, And I wish there was more events that sort of help us sort of bridge the gap that I think sometimes in the way that things are right now seems to be kind of opening itself up all the time. I'm grateful also there's pieces like Inuksuit where I feel like actually it almost is the perfect music making kind, to go and do this. Because what was interesting, I was thinking about it, can you imagine just doing this and all of a sudden, you don't even care, you don't even know there's a border somewhere. I mean, you don't have to even think about this because you're listening to the music and you're hearing everything, and at the end of the day, that's all that matters, basically, nothing else, I think that must have been a surreal experience for the musicians themselves, actually, and I think that I'm totally very, very jealous of that moment too, besides, of course, being in the audience and experience this.
Yeah, yeah. I've been to Mexico a couple times, but Laurel and I had a great time with Evaristo Aguilar. I don't know if you guys know or not, but he's at Most Pasix, and yeah, what a wonderful guy in Tampico. But what I was going to say is at the University San Marcos in Texas, it's right on the Juarez border. Like you could literally throw, like the campus is here, and then you could chuck very comfortably, a rock into Juarez, and you couldn't put a wall there. Like you just couldn't. Like I know I'm changing the topic a little bit, but like seeing it, it's like, wait, here's the road, here's the university, here's the music building, and then Juarez is right there. You'd have to knock a building down to put it's like it's literally just right there. Anyway, that doesn't have much to do with what we're saying, but
we should tell them that this was our stage for Studio Frontera, and that's not a good place for a wall, unfortunately. This is where our stage is going.
Yeah.
No, but if you think about it, if you connect this with music, I think I always talk to students and say, hey, please learn sort of based on the shared knowledge you have. Don't learn percussion based on the shared knowledge between instruments. Say, rather than individualize every instrument in your head and kind of just to learn it for what it is. Of course, do that, but also really learn from other things and apply them. And I think it's funny. I feel that there is so much natural in that. Being able to just sort of have shared and sort of non-separated. That's actually sort of, I think in a sense, it's such a natural type of existence. And for me, I totally agree, Casey. You're probably looking at this going, well, must feel very, very strange, Must be very, very strange to have something that sort of separates things where it totally doesn't belong. Yeah. And, I'm European. And, for example, Europe in the past used to have, between different countries, because different countries in Europe are basically like different states here. You can think of it this way. Although some of the countries are much smaller than some of the states here, and it used to be in the past when you would travel, going from country to country, you would have to literally cross the border. There would be some sort of patrol or something like this. And now when the European Union is there, basically there's almost no borders. I mean, you could drive. I mean, I remember, for example, when I go to Holland to visit the Adams factory, for example, you would land. You have multiple options to land. One of the best ones to land in Germany. So from Germany, you keep driving. You don't realize you're now for a little bit in Belgium. And then you don't realize that all of a sudden you're in Holland. You just drive. It looks the same. It's basically planet Earth. And that's all you need to know.
It's like the U.S., but states, Yeah,
exactly.
States versus countries, yeah.
Right, but it was something that it was sort of so, I don't know, it's so easy to get used to that, And so I find that for a second there, when we were talking about this article, I felt that literally was that one moment when, and I know, for example, a lot of musicians, they also probably travel too, but in this sense, everyone probably felt like they were just in one of those situations where you're having like a trip and it happened to be a musical trip, but there's just no, there's no control on border patrol. There's nothing. You go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's one other thing I wanted to add about the article I forgot to add first, but I don't think it was easy for them to do this. And, even though it clearly was a political statement, I think Schick said that it was first and foremost a musical event. And he said that there had been a lot of proposals given to, make events happen around the border, and a lot of them have been rejected. For example, there was a German orchestra that wanted to do a protest concert, and they were turned down. So the San Diego Symphony, it was important that they were involved in this proposal because they said, no, this is not purely a political gesture. This is a musical event. This is a concert connecting people and places. And because of that, they accepted it.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that piece, though, is meant to be played pretty much outside. So technically speaking, there's no place that, that normally you can walk to that should be forbidden to go and play it, It's
right.
basically, it's like a outside concert hall.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome.
Well, and back to the thing I mentioned about the quotes from the article, it's like the wonderful thing is the place they expected to find resistance, the Border Patrol, the border agents, they actually found support,
right.
And it's just, I don't know, that's great. And
it's also indicative what you talked about, that they actually missed it when it was gone. They said, I wish it didn't end, right? That's what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's actually very indicative of also just how much that sort of can warm up someone's heart in a situation that's not easy. I mean, it's hard to balance what these guys do. But I think that this is just an epic achievement for Steve Schick and everybody involved. And I think it's so proud. It makes me so proud for them, that they have done something like this. I hope we all are able to sort of contribute in any way and go make a dent just like that.
It makes me proud of all of us too. I mean, I know I didn't do anything, but it makes me proud to be, a percussionist in this community, and we hear about these things, and of course, Steve Schick is someone we all hold up and look to, and it makes you feel proud, Yeah.
Well, I was almost thinking, I wonder if there is a way, to almost start a wave. And if you guys, joked aside, okay. So Ben joked that Ben, this is all on you now, so you're gonna have to handle this. But see what you started here. What if we actually find a way and sort of think about the idea? I don't think it's gonna be very easy to go and play Studios de Frontera in a place like this. But what if we actually have someone commission a piece that's for Border Wall, and we go play it on both sides of it? It's going to be a musical event.
Awesome.
It's just basically a percussion. A percussion. How do you call quartets for 4? What is for 100? How do you call it? Quintet. We'll call it quintet.
Yeah.
And
sure.
It's going to be basically for 2 countries in the border wall.
This
Creative
part of
composer.
The border is 15 miles long, and he actually described it in the article that there's a lot of space in between it, and performers were allowed to go there, but audience members were not. But it was constructed, that those 15 miles were constructed during the Clinton era. I can't find out where it is, but there's 15 miles of wall in that section. So this piece will ensure that we've got one person per, however many yards.
That's right. And I challenged Ben Charles to follow up on this, because he was the one who started the whole thing, and see if maybe that's something we can all combine our forces and enjoy together. Because I think what would be very interesting is that if we all, in fact, if you find 100 people and we all chip in a little bit and get someone who understands the value of what this means to write something like that.
I like this challenge.
I think that could be a very, very interesting event that also should and only focus on music.
Let's put hashtag Todd Meehan border commission challenge. Starting with Ben.
That's
Great
right.
idea.
That's right, Ben. Do this. Here we go.
Oh, God.
Well, speaking of Ben, we had Alejandro Vinao on the show, I don't know, so many episodes ago, and it was wonderful. But you're gonna tell us a little about him today, and then hopefully Svet will do the same.
Yeah, I just mostly wanted to bring up Alejandro Vinao to hear Svet talk about him, because Svet's worked with him so extensively. But as per usual, I'll do a very brief background bio thing and then talk about some of his percussion works. So Alejandro Vinao was born in 1951 in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He began his musical career studying guitar and conducting, and he studied with the Russian composer Jacobo Fischer in Buenos Aires before moving to London, where he studied at the Royal Conservatory College of Music. He continued in London at City University, where he earned his PhD in composition, and he has resided in Britain ever since he was a student there. He's received several honors, including the 1981 First Prize International Competition for Electroacoustic Music and a 1994 Guggenheim Fellowship. He's received commissions from IRCAM, MIT, and the BBC Symphony Orchestra. His compositional output includes works for opera, symphony orchestra, vocal works, electronic works, and more. He describes his music, this is a quote from his website, he says, his music is characterized by the use of pulse rhythmic structures to create large-scale form and by a melodic writing which, as in the case of much non-European music, develops through rhythm rather than harmony. Recent works, he says, have sometimes focused on contemporary social and political issues. As you can imagine, God damn it, Svet. Trying to read.
Hang in there.
Edit that out, Casey.
Yeah, I got it. It's okay. Svet started it. Sorry.
Oh, it's always Svet's fault.
Okay. Breathe. Okay. As you can imagine, with his music being so rhythmically focused, his works are often feature percussion instruments. And in fact, if you go on his website, he has a whole section of his website dedicated to his percussion works. The earliest of those percussion works is called Tumblers. It was written for violin, marimba, and computer for Nancy Zeltzman / Marimba Lynn. And there's a wonderful recording by Mark Bozeman of this on YouTube. We had him on the podcast a good while ago at this point. He has a marimba concerto from 1993 that was written for Robert Van Cise, who was, of course, Svet's teacher. Then in 2001, there was a commissioning consortium that commissioned him to write a marimba solo, which was called Con Variations, and that's I shouldn't say very common, but somewhat commonly played now. It's incredibly difficult, and the ironic thing that I've heard is it was written to be easier than the marimba concerto. In 2004, he wrote a piece called Estudios de Frontera for percussion quintet, which has a sort of solo marimba part in it, and he added another movement to that. It's now the second movement in 2016, which is a more slow sort of lyrical movement. He wrote a piece called Riff in 2006 for marimba and piano, which was commissioned by Michael Burrett. Also in 2006, he wrote a marimba and vibraphone duo called Arabesco Infinito. In 2008, he wrote a piece called Formas del Viento for flute and percussion player playing marimba and vibraphone. And then in 2009, he created another version for flute and two percussionists, one playing marimba, one playing vibraphone. In 2011, he wrote a piece called Book of Grooves that is 4 movements long for marimba duo. That was another commissioning consortium. And this is something I found out when I was researching this. In 2014, he actually made an orchestra version of the last movement of that, of Dance Groove Drifting. And if you go on his website, you can hear the MIDI demo of it. And I don't know if it's ever been performed, but it does exist. And he said on his website that he's interested, I think, in making orchestra versions of the other 3 movements as well. In 2012, Michael Burrett commissioned him to create another solo marimba piece, and that piece is called Burrett Variations. In 2013, he wrote a percussion quintet plus piano, so 6 players total, called Water, and that was another commissioning consortium which included Svet Stoyanov and the Frost School of Music. In 2015, he was commissioned to write a percussion trio called Relative Riffs, and his most recent work that's been completed, he was actually working on when we spoke with him. The title's in Spanish. I won't attempt to butcher the Spanish. The English translation is Wood, Wind, and Metal, and that is for marimba and electronics. On his website, he also lists his in-progress works. He has a 2017/18 project of writing a very involved work for percussion quartet and electronics. It's going to be 25+ minutes in length and consist of 3 or 4 movements. That was commissioned by Robert Van Cise for his newly formed Van Cise Percussion Collective. And then Kunikomori is working on getting together a commissioning group for a new work for marimba, guitar, and double bass. And then he also has a section of his website where he lists pieces that he's interested in writing. He says he would like to write a percussion concerto, a piece for marimba and string quartet. And I think the most interesting one that he lists he's interested in is a 2 piano, 2 percussion work to sort of complement, of course, the famous Bartók Sonata. And if you're interested in more music on Alejandro Vinao, of course, his website is a great resource, but also if you're specifically interested about con variations, John Roberts from the University of North Texas wrote his doctoral dissertation on con variations. It's very well written. So that's Alejandro Vinao in a nutshell. And Svet, you've worked with him obviously extensively and commissioned him and had him out to Miami. So could you tell us about your experiences working with him?
Oh, well, it's so hard, to give you a 2-minute version of a person, I have to say Alejandro is just someone who is incredibly committed to our art form, and someone with just immense amount of integrity. He, as I have said before, he does not have a short answer pretty much for any question, but he has a good reason for that. And is simply a person who I've come to just admire and respect greatly, because he has a reason for everything he writes, and he takes time to write, but it shows. And I think he's just done a tremendous service to our art form. In fact, I joked some time ago about conversations. I said, if you actually take away the pitches of conversation, you just put this on a drum set and you just play that would sound pretty awesome. There's something just amazing about the rhythmic language that Alejandro has, and in the way that he uses what he knows. And and also because throughout time, I think he's learned how to write for percussion. I think that, he always gets to the core of what he's trying to do in his pieces. It's, sometimes you're just not sure, especially somebody's not experienced in writing percussion, what you're going to get. And it's not because they don't want to do it or there's lack of commitment. It's different when you're really used to writing for a certain art form. And so he's just so well versed. I mean, I think he's at home there. And I think this is partially why he gets commissioned so much. I feel that I remember when Conversations was given to me to play by Robert Van Cise, who was a part of that commission. And I opened the music, and I actually was in touch with Alejandro. I was, a young Bulgarian dude that was trying to, first of all, learn English, of all things. And, I was talking to him, and his questions were just amazing. He was asking me, because I would record a section and just send it to him to listen to, and he would say, so does this work? And I said, I just need to practice more. I'll get it done. He said, no. Does it work for percussion? Is it well written for the instrument? And that was basically when a giant, bell just rang in my head of, you want to stay in touch with this person. You want him to write more music for percussion. They're really caring about us in the right way. And so here we are many years later, where Conversation has become literally one of those standard pieces that is in the repertoire of what we treasure as pieces that simply elevate our art form. With Con, I remember, for example, when I was practicing the variation of canonic echoes. And I was looking at this going, wow, I don't even know where to begin with this. I have to learn how to learn something. And I just realized how amazing it was that he pushed the envelope, but it wasn't impossible. It was just mind-opening. You had to open your mind and let it sort of soak this in, and then go figure out and learn it. And so I'm just grateful, so grateful to him, first of all, for his friendship, for the universal friendship he has with every person who plays percussion, with all he's written for all of us. And for how seriously he takes it, he's one of those people. Actually, I don't know if you guys know this. Alejandro does not have anything sort of else as a position. He is solely a composer. I think for some time, I remember I even talked to him about some teaching jobs that I really wish that he's closer to us here. And he said, I really just would like to write. And I find Alejandro to be someone whose music every percussionist should sort of experience, and would become a better player and better musician just because of that. And I feel that speaking of how Steve Schick just did an amazing sort of effort, which gave an amazing service to people and also to us as in our art form. I think Alejandro, in a completely different way, has done the same very thing, and I am so forever grateful. Guys, and he's so fun. He's a very serious guy, but he's just really a great person. And I think that is why there's so many people who are such we all just love him so much. It's because of that, I think, too.
Wow, cool. I loved him on the podcast. He just had, not only was he well spoken, but he just had cool thoughts. He just had really good information. You know, it wasn't. Yeah, I don't know. We try so hard to not get out information that you could just go Google. You know, Svet, where did you get your degrees? And it's like, yeah, we can Google that. You know, we don't need to ask you that.
Right.
We can find that. You know, we can find that in his bio, and we got so much out of that. And we usually do that with most of our guests.
Tell us something we don't know. You know, tell us something that we don't know that you haven't put it anywhere. You know, just tell us the good and the bad and the ugly.
Yeah.
Tell us the ugly first.
Yeah, tell us something that we can only get right here and now, like we can't get anywhere else. And
but
the real Alejandro Vinao.
Word.
That's right. We're recording this. We are definitely recording. No, but truth be told is, I don't think that he is one of those people that also hides from that. I joke about it I say to him, it's really hard to have an argument with you because you're just so darn informed that it's, you got to list your sources, not just what you know, but you're going to tell us how you know it. And truth be told is that it's kind of exceptional when you have people like that because it kind of it goes into everything. I mean, if you think about it, I think every piece Alejandro writes, it has some sort of a tale to it, and it's very well informed tale. It's not just, I had an inspiration with something. I had an inspiration with something, so when studied it in depth and thought about it for a few months, and then here is what came out. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah. I think also just what you said of him being so involved in the process, that I don't know if I talked about this when we had him on the episode, but we traveled with him to PASIC from Rochester when he wrote Water for Eastern Percussion Ensemble. And it was such a cool experience getting to know him because, he wanted to travel on the bus with us and hang out with us and get to know us and be a part of that whole experience, not fly and stay in a fancy hotel or whatever. It was just such a real person. But I think, asking questions and being so involved in that process, I think that's him, and that's so cool.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons why you said pieces a lot of his pieces, but especially Convariations, has become such a staple in our repertoire and will continue, It's part of our repertoire, period.
There's something really, really attractive about people who are just always down to earth regardless of what happens to them. I remember someone told me in the past, may have been Robert Van Sice, he heard someone say, the moment you read your resume or your bio and believe everything that's in it, you're done. And the joke aside, I'm sure some people love reading their bios. I have no idea. I mean, that's what I was joking at the beginning of this podcast. Be like, where'd you get all this info about me? Well, that happened. How did all these people get in my room? But the whole point is, the whole idea of just staying, having humility, and I think as an artist, especially so, it's so important to keep down to earth, to keep current, to keep daring, to keep being also just the best human you can be. And Alejandro is such a, you listen to the music and you go, oh my gosh, this guy's got to be intimidating and so serious. And the fact is he is, but that's because he's so good at what he does and so serious. But he's also one of the most fun and cool people when, sort of get him out of this context. And, he's just a great guy. Totally. Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing. When he was here in Miami, I remember, we worked so hard. So guys, this is hysterical. We had this session. So we had him he came here actually because when Water was commissioned, we co-commissioned it, as a, Megan, you said it was also Eastman was involved. There was a lot of people who got involved in this, and one of the partners that I was able to sort of engage in this was actually the New World Percussion Concert. So the New World Symphony has a percussion section that actually does concerts twice a year, and they actually co-commissioned the piece with us as well. Cool. And so they performed the piece in Miami, and actually Alejandro came to see the performance. They invited him to come into the performance. It was so great. I was able to go and enjoy the performance and to also see him work with them. And but on that night when then he came to work at the percussion studio, it was hilarious because I said, listen, this is going to be a long night, dude. We are here. I think we had 5 pieces. I think we had Estudios de Frontera, we had Convariations, we had Book of Grooves, we had Arbesco Infinito, and we had, what else was it? Well, maybe that was it, but it was just these 5 hours of Alejandro Vinao. I think that this might have been the one time he just looked at me and he probably was like, can we please go now? So much. But I think it was so, just like you said, guys, he always brings up good information to people, and he knows his music, and, he's so amazing with feedback. And it was so much fun to have him. But that's why he was actually with us too. It was the same thing, like you said, man. It was just down to earth, hung out with the studio, came, had beers with us, and that was one of the most favorite part of the people too, because they got to know him as a person.
Right.
So on that trip, I got to know Alejandro real well as a person, because I was living in Boca Raton, which is like 50 miles directly north of Miami, and Alejandro was staying with his in-laws somewhere like in Fort Lauderdale area when he came. And so at the end of the night, Svet was like, "Hey Ben, like you're going north. Can you just take Alejandro back to his in-laws?" Keep in mind, it was probably like 1 a.m. at this point. What Svet didn't mention is that
it was a long session.
While it was north, it was also like 45 minutes inland. So I got home at
Texas.
like 3 or 4 in the morning. I was like, "Oh, Svet." But Alejandro was totally cool about it and conversed until we got there at God knows what hour.
Cool.
See, I didn't know that. Had I known that was the case, I would have driven. I thought it was even farther than that.
Or had you have known Ben would have gotten so much out of it, you would have gone yourself. Well, hey guys, we have a couple minutes left. I want to try to knock through these Facebook questions for Svet. We just have 2.
Okay.
And yeah, we can probably take about 10 minutes or so. I think we can get through these, but I'll just go in order. The first one from our friend Marco Schirripa. He says, "In the few performances of yours I have seen, perhaps the most notable element for me was your dynamic stage presence. Is this something into which you put thought or simply let it happen intuitively? Do you have any specific thoughts or philosophies regarding this topic you would like to share?"
I think that's just called being Bulgarian.
Yeah, here we go. You just asked Ben Charles. I have to say, I first of all, I do not necessarily think about these things when I'm performing at all. I feel like what you see just tries to come naturally. Basically, it's the only way I can describe it is just my natural response to what I'm doing. I would say, if I have any thoughts on this, that would be that I find that movement can be an incredibly powerful tool, especially speaking in music and especially in percussion performance, because our art form is extremely physical. I find that movement can also sort of help bring out certain parts of a player that normally they would not naturally be able to bring up. And at the same time, I think movement can also very much, have the power to interfere with what we do. It's a very beautiful tool if used up to that threshold where it could start sort of interfering. I could give an example too. Is if you find sometimes there are people who move quite a little bit, quite too little, and I think at the end of the day, more often than not, you can hear it in the sound. You can hear that the sound also stays a bit flat, just like the lack of movement. And I think that, that might be my personal opinion, but that's what I noticed. And I find that there is that beautiful middle ground where you could find more ways to move and support what you're playing. And the basic threshold is the moment you start realizing that you're not playing as well and you're actually kind of going overboard and you're either making mistakes or feeling as if things are actually going beyond what one would wish, then at that point one has to actually pay attention to the movement. So my philosophy for me is I basically play and try to be as natural as possible, and if I feel like there's moments where that starts to not help me, starts to sort of take away from my goals and my desired sort of area of achievement, I try to basically become conscious of it at that point and either put a mirror or try to be sensitive to understand why am I moving in a certain way and what part of the movement is interfering with what I'm doing. So movement should always enhance performance, and in the moment it does not, it should be really sort of taken into consideration.
Yeah, wow, great. One more from Will Marinelli. Thanks, Will and Marco, for these questions. He asked, what was it like premiering the Phillip Glass two-timpani concerto at the Lincoln Center while you were at such a young age?
First of all, I really mean this absolutely sincerely. I, first of all, am grateful for that opportunity. That the opportunity was given to me by Jonathan Haas, who remains a colleague and a good friend. And I think it was a very much life-changing opportunity for me in many ways. Playing with wonderful orchestras, being able to go and perform in fantastic halls, learning so much about performance, learning so much about timpani especially. I would tell you, it's one of those experiences, maybe to come up sort of full circle, as Steve Schick said, it I would never forget in my life. And what I would say is, it was an experience that was extremely challenging for me. I don't know if you guys know this. It's a very funny story, actually. But actually, when I was given the concerto to learn it, when John and I spoke about this, he said, you know what? Actually, Phillip Glass, that is, and him and Christoph Eschenbach really want to listen to this in New York because they want to see how everything feels, etc. So I'm giving you the piece right now, but can you come in New York in 4 days and play this with us? And I said, sure. I mean, you know, I'm sitting there, I was probably like 19 years old. I said, sure, of course I will. And what I hadn't realized, I haven't opened the music. And what I realized when I opened the music is that you just see basically this wonderful melodic lines that are written in, but you have no idea how many timpani you need. You have no idea when to retune and which drum. So you kind of had to choreograph the whole setup. You had to actually figure out how many drums do you need, and then figure out if the ideas were good or bad of what you thought as decisions as far as that goes, and then actually learn it and learn it in tempo and go play it. So I found that I learned a lot about myself on that day, and maybe we can leave it at that point. Besides the magical moments of playing on stage and learning so much from these fantastic halls and orchestras and musicians who played together with John, I learned that if one really loves what they do, and that is in our case music, regardless of the challenge, one has a purpose, and one will find ways to achieve what they desire.
That's a quote right there.
Yeah, so guys, great, excellent quote from Svet. But Ben, you had a quote also, so why don't you tell us that quote?
Yeah, when Megan sent us the article that she sent us, there was a video linked, and there was a quote from Steve Schick in it that I thought was a great little nugget to close on today. Steve Schick said, "There's nothing to gain. You can't win anything if you're a musician. There's really no material gain to be had from doing what we're doing. Both the most you can expect and the least you can expect is to change people's lives."
Cool.
Boom.
Just that.
Steve Schick.
Just that. And scene.
And scene. Yeah, right. Hey, guys, that was great. Excellent. Thanks so much, Megan, Ben, and Laurel. And you guys, that's Svet Stoyanov. Thanks, Svet.
Thank you all very much. This was so much fun. Thank you guys for all you do.
Great to have you.
Yeah,
Ditto. Same here. It was a joy. Thank you guys.
Good to see you as always.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
That's right.
cool. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
Okay,
Sounds
cheers.
good.
Bye.
Bye.